Have you ever felt like something was off, as if the world around you was carefully crafted, yet beneath the surface, something was missing, something you couldn't quite explain? Maybe you've caught yourself staring at the night sky, feeling a strange sense of longing, as if you were meant for something greater. Maybe you've walked through life, following the rules, yet deep down, a voice inside you whispers, "This isn't all there is." That voice is the beginning of something profound. It is the first crack in the illusion, the first sign that you are waking up. Throughout history, philosophers, mystics, and spiritual seekers have spoken about awakening, a journey that takes you from the surface of reality into the deepest truths of existence. From Plato's Allegory of the Cave to Buddha's Enlightenment, from Sufi mystics like Rumi to modern psychology's exploration of consciousness, this path has been mapped out time and time again. Yet most people remain asleep, unaware that they are caught in a dream they mistake for reality. But what if you could wake up? What if there was a way to break free from illusion, see beyond the veil, and understand the truth of your existence? This journey is not easy. It requires you to confront everything you believe to be true, to let go of illusions, face the unknown, and step into a greater understanding of yourself and the universe. At first, the signs are subtle, a thought that won't go away, a sense that the world isn't quite what it seems. But then, the illusions begin to crack, and reality starts to reveal itself in ways you never expected. And that's where the journey begins. Level 1, the illusion of reality, the sleep state. Have you ever questioned the reality you live in? What if everything you know, the world, your identity, your beliefs, is nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion? Most people walk through life believing they are free, believing they make their own choices. But in truth, they are trapped, bound by invisible chains they cannot see. These chains are not made of steel, but of conditioning, false beliefs, and a world designed to keep them asleep. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato, in his famous Allegory of the Cave, describes prisoners who have spent their entire lives in darkness, watching shadows on a wall, believing them to be reality. They have never seen the real world outside the cave. To them, the shadows are all that exist. But what if one of them escaped? What if he turned around and saw the fire casting those shadows? What if he stepped outside and saw the real world for the first time? Would he believe his own eyes, or would the truth be too painful to accept? This is the first level of awakening, the moment when you begin to suspect that the world you live in is not what it seems. From the moment you are born, your perception of reality is shaped for you. You are given a name, a nationality, a religion, a belief system. You are told what is right and wrong, what is possible and impossible. You are handed a script, and you follow it without question. But who wrote that script? And why? Philosophers like Noam Chomsky argue that society is designed to control thought. The smart way to keep people passive and obedient is to strictly limit the spectrum of acceptable opinion, but allow very lively debate within that spectrum. This means that you are only given the illusion of freedom. You can choose between different brands, different politicians, different lifestyles, but all within a system that has already decided the boundaries for you. Religious texts also warn about this illusion. The Quran speaks of people who are alive in body but dead in spirit. They have hearts with which they do not understand, eyes with which they do not see, and ears with which they do not hear. They are like cattle or even more astray. Quran 7:179. Similarly, the Bible warns in the Gospel of Matthew, though seeing they do not see, though hearing they do not hear or understand. Matthew 13:13. In Buddhism, this illusion is called Maya, a false reality that keeps the soul trapped in suffering. In Hindu philosophy, Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, "The wise see that there is action in inaction, and inaction in action. Fools are deluded by appearances." Bhagavad Gita 4:18. The world you see is not the world as it is. It is the world as you have been taught to see it. If the world around you is an illusion, then who are you within it? Most people believe they are their thoughts, their memories, their achievements, their failures. But this identity, the one you defend, the one you build your life around, is nothing more than a construct of the ego. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, spoke about the shadow self, the hidden part of the mind that shapes our fears, desires, and actions. He warned that people live under the illusion that they are rational beings, when in reality, they are controlled by unconscious forces they do not understand. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. This is why so many people feel lost, anxious, and disconnected, because they are not living as their true self. They are trapped in a false identity, created by society, reinforced by fear, and protected by the ego. The ego does not want you to wake up, because to awaken is to see through the illusion of who you think you are. For some, the illusion begins to crack slowly, a feeling that something is off, a strange coincidence, a dream that feels more real than waking life. For others, the awakening is violent, a crisis that shakes them to their core, a loss, a betrayal, a moment of deep suffering. Friedrich Nietzsche described this moment in his work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. One must be ready to burn in one's own flame. How could one rise anew if one had not first become ashes? Pain is often the first sign of awakening, because pain forces you to question. It rips away false certainty and forces you to see what is real. Suddenly, the life you were living no longer makes sense. The things that once satisfied you feel empty. The things that once gave you security now feel like chains. This is the moment when you begin to wake up. At this stage, you stand at a crossroads. You can ignore the signs, go back to sleep, and continue life as you always have, believing what you are told, following the path laid out for you. Or you can step into the unknown. But be warned, once you begin to wake up, there is no turning back. The deeper you go, the more illusions will fall away. And once you see the truth, you can never unsee it. In Plato's cave, the prisoner who escapes sees the real world for the first time. But when he returns to tell the others, they do not believe him. They mock him, call him insane. They would rather stay in the comfort of the shadows than face the blinding light of reality. This is why the path of awakening is not for everyone. Most people choose comfort over truth. But for those who seek truth above all else, the journey continues. Level 2. The awakening of the mind, questioning reality. Have you ever questioned everything you once believed? The world you thought was real? The truths you accepted without hesitation? What if they were nothing more than carefully crafted illusions? At first, the awakening is subtle. You notice things you never paid attention to before. Conversations feel scripted. The news feels rehearsed. People around you seem caught in routines they never question. Then something shifts. A single question enters your mind. One so powerful, it threatens to unravel everything. What if the reality I was given is not the truth? The great philosopher René Descartes, in his work Meditations on First Philosophy, described a moment where he questioned everything he had ever known. He wrote, "If I am to find the truth, I must doubt everything." This is the beginning of the second stage of awakening, the point where your mind no longer accepts reality at face value. But questioning reality is not easy. Doubt is painful. It feels like the ground beneath you is shifting, like the very foundation of your identity is cracking. Carl Jung, who studied the depths of the unconscious mind, warned that awakening would not be comfortable. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. At this stage, most people turn back. The fear of the unknown is too great. The need for certainty is too strong. But for those who continue, a new kind of vision begins to emerge. You begin to see patterns. The way information is controlled. The way people are kept distracted, divided, and fearful. You realize that the world is not what it seems. It is a carefully constructed narrative. The philosopher Aldous Huxley, in Brave New World, described a world where people are not controlled by force, but by pleasure and distraction. A really efficient totalitarian state would be one in which the people love their servitude. Think about it. Why do people accept their reality so easily? Because they are given entertainment, comfort, and routines that numb the need for deep thought. The Roman Empire used a strategy called bread and circuses. As long as the people had food and entertainment, they would never rebel. The same formula is used today. Endless distractions, a system that punishes critical thinking, a world designed to keep you comfortable enough to never question it. Once you begin to question reality, something strange happens. The things that once gave you joy feel meaningless. The people around you feel distant, as if they are trapped in a dream you can no longer participate in. This is what mystics and spiritual teachers call the dark night of the soul, a period of deep inner crisis. The Bhagavad Gita describes this moment when Arjuna, the warrior, breaks down in battle, questioning everything. I see no meaning in this life. My soul is confused. Guide me, for I do not know what is true. Where Bhagavad Gita 2:7. In Islamic tradition, this phase is seen as a test of faith. The Quran states, do people think they will be left alone after saying, we believe, without being tested? Quran 29:2. Buddha himself faced this crisis under the Bodhi tree, when illusions tried to pull him back into ignorance before he reached enlightenment. At this stage, you will experience fear, isolation, and confusion. But it is only through destruction that the truth can be revealed. The Sufi poet Rumi described this moment beautifully. Try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life shape you, for you are being polished into something greater. For those who endure the dark night, a shift begins. You start to notice synchronicities, events that feel too meaningful to be coincidences. Books, people, or experiences appear at just the right time, as if something is guiding you. The Swiss psychologist Carl Jung called this synchronicity, the universe communicating with the conscious mind. He wrote, synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see. And this is where the second level of awakening truly takes hold. You no longer see the world as solid and fixed. Instead, you realize that reality is more like a dream, fluid, malleable, shaped by consciousness itself. The ancient Hermetic texts, which influenced early philosophy and mysticism, state, the all is mind, the universe is mental, reality bends to the will of the awakened. The Kabbalion, 1908. You begin to wonder, if reality is not what I thought, then what is it? If my identity is an illusion, then who am I? The questions deepen and the ego begins to panic, because to go further means to face yourself, and that is exactly what comes next. Level 3, the breakdown of the ego, the death of the false self. Have you ever felt like you were losing yourself? As if the person you once were, the identity you carefully built, was slowly crumbling away? This is not an illusion. It is the next stage of awakening. At this level, something profound happens. You begin to realize that the self you have been defending, protecting, and clinging to is not real. It was never real. It was a mask, a temporary identity shaped by society, experiences, and fear. And now as you awaken, it begins to fall apart. For most of your life, you have lived under the rule of the ego, the part of you that identifies with your name, your past, your achievements, and your suffering. The psychologist Carl Jung warned that the ego is only a small fragment of who we truly are. Yet most people mistake it for their entire being. He wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The ego feeds on comparison, judgment, and fear. It wants control, it wants approval, it wants to be seen as important. But what happens when you start to awaken? The ego fights back. You feel lost. You feel like something is slipping away. But what is really happening is transformation. The Sufi mystic Rumi described this moment as a burning away of the false self. Try not to resist the fire of transformation. It does not burn you, it burns what you are not. At this stage, something terrifying happens. You begin to see yourself as you truly are, not as the person you pretend to be, not as the identity you constructed, but the real you, the one hidden beneath layers of conditioning and illusion. Carl Jung called this process shadow work, the confrontation with the parts of yourself that you have repressed, denied, or ignored. He wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This is why awakening is so painful. You do not just lose the illusions of the world, you lose the illusions of who you thought you were. Religious traditions describe this phase as a form of death. In Christianity, Jesus says, "Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it." Matthew 16:25. In Buddhism, the concept of anatta, no self, teaches that clinging to the ego is the source of suffering. In Islam, the ego, nafs, is seen as the greatest enemy, keeping the soul trapped in illusion. The Quran warns, "Have you seen the one who takes his desires as his God?" Quran 45:23. At this point, everything collapses. You feel like you are falling into an abyss. But the truth is, you are not falling. You are being set free. Have you ever wondered why so many ancient stories talk about death and rebirth? Because every great transformation requires the destruction of the old self. The phoenix burns itself to ashes before it is reborn. The caterpillar dissolves completely before becoming a butterfly. In alchemy, lead must be destroyed before it becomes gold. The ancient practice of alchemy, often misunderstood as the transformation of metals, was actually a symbol of inner transformation. The old self, lead, must die for the true self, gold, to emerge. The Bhagavad Gita describes this moment as breaking free from illusion. The soul is eternal, but the false self must perish for the truth to emerge. Bhagavad Gita 2:20. Similarly, the Tao Te Ching, written by Lao Tzu, teaches that only by letting go of who you think you are can you discover who you truly are. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. At this level, you realize that you are not your name, not your past, not your suffering. You are something much greater. But to embrace that truth, you must let go. At this point, you have a choice. You can resist, cling to the old self, fight the transformation, and retreat into illusion. Or you can surrender. Let go of the ego, embrace the unknown, and allow yourself to evolve. But surrender is terrifying. The ego fears its own destruction. It will try to convince you that without it, you are nothing. But this is the greatest lie. The mystic Eckhart Tolle writes, "The end of the ego is not death, it is freedom." When you surrender, something incredible happens. You do not vanish. You do not become nothing. You become everything. And for the first time, you feel what it truly means to be alive. Level 4. The rebirth of the soul, true self emerges. Have you ever felt like you lost yourself, only to realize that what you lost was never really you? After the ego has crumbled, after the illusions have shattered, something profound happens. For the first time, you are empty. But this emptiness is not a void. It is a space where something new can emerge. This is the rebirth of the soul, the moment when you discover who you truly are beyond conditioning, beyond false identities, beyond the illusions of the mind. At first, it feels strange. For so long, your mind was filled with noise, fear, expectations, self-doubt. But now there is only silence. This silence is not emptiness. It is presence. The Taoist sage Lao Tzu described this state as returning to the source. To the mind that is still, the whole universe surrenders. Tao Te Ching, chapter 26. For the first time, you are not reacting. You are simply being. Everything feels clearer. The world appears more vibrant. Time slows down. You are no longer lost in thought. You are aware. This is the true beginning of inner freedom. The philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson, in his essay, The Oversoul, described a profound realization. Within man is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, the eternal one. At this stage, you begin to sense that you are not separate from existence. You are a part of something far greater. Religious and mystical traditions describe this realization in different ways. In Hinduism, this is the recognition of Atman, the soul, as one with Brahman, the divine consciousness. In Sufism, it is the moment of fana, where the self dissolves into divine unity. In Christianity, it is the state of surrender where one becomes aligned with the will of God. In Buddhism, it is the beginning of enlightenment, seeing reality without illusion. For the first time, you no longer feel alone. The great psychologist Carl Jung described this as individuation, the integration of the true self. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." You begin to trust your intuition more than external voices. You see beyond manipulation, beyond fear. You no longer seek meaning outside yourself, because meaning arises from within. For years, you searched for meaning. You devoured books, followed teachers, tried different paths, but now the search itself falls away. You realize something profound. You were never lost. You were simply looking in the wrong place. The Buddha described this realization in his final teaching. Be a light unto yourself. The Bhagavad Gita speaks of this moment when Krishna tells Arjuna, "Abandon all doctrines, all fears, and come to me alone. I will free you from all suffering." Bhagavad Gita 1866. You understand now that the answers were always within you. You no longer need external validation. You no longer seek happiness in the future. You no longer fear the unknown. This is true power, not the power to control, but the power to be fully present in every moment. At this stage, something unexpected happens. After the ego collapses, after the false self dies, love returns, but not in the way you once knew it. You no longer love out of attachment or need. You love because you recognize yourself in others. The Sufi poet Rumi expressed this transformation in a single line. Your task is not to seek love, but to remove the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. When you awaken to the truth of who you are, you see that all beings are part of the same consciousness. This is why Buddha, Jesus, Rumi, and Lao Tzu all spoke of love, not as a possession, but as a state of being. Love your neighbor as yourself. Mark 12:31, Bible. Because in the highest truth, there is no neighbor. There is only you. You are not the person you once were. The old identity, the one based on fear, validation, and illusion, has died. In its place, something new has emerged. Something freer, lighter, more at peace. But this new self is not a fixed identity, because now you understand that who you are is not a name, a title, or a story. You are awareness itself. The Tao Te Ching describes this state as being like water, flowing effortlessly with existence. When you let go of what you are, you become what you might be. You no longer try to define yourself. You simply exist effortlessly in alignment with the flow of life. But there is one final stage left. To fully awaken, you must go even deeper. Level 5, merging with the infinite, the universal self. Have you ever felt a moment of pure stillness? A moment where time seemed to dissolve and you felt as if you were connected to something far greater than yourself? It might have happened while staring at the stars, or while lost in deep meditation, or even in a fleeting second of absolute clarity, where you realized that the boundary between you and everything else was just an illusion. This is the 5th stage of awakening, the moment when the individual self merges with the infinite, when you realize beyond all doubt that you were never separate to begin with. For your entire life, you believed yourself to be an individual, separate from the world, from others, from the universe itself. But now that illusion crumbles. In Advaita Vedanta, the ancient Hindu philosophy of non-duality, this realization is described in a single phrase, Tat Tvam Asi, you are that. It means that there is no difference between you and the universe, that the observer and the observed are one. Science is now beginning to catch up with this truth. Quantum physics suggests that everything is interconnected, that the mind influences reality, and that time itself may be an illusion. Even the Bhagavad Gita speaks of this realization. The wise see all beings in themselves and themselves in all beings. Bhagavad Gita 6:29. For the first time you feel it, not as a concept, but as a direct experience. You no longer see people as others. You see them as reflections of the same consciousness. You no longer feel small or insignificant. You feel infinite. Even after all this awakening, the ego still tries to hold on. It whispers, you still need control. You still need an identity. You still need to define yourself. But now you see through the illusion. The great Zen master Shunryu Suzuki described this moment. When you realize that everything changes, you find perfect composure in letting go. You stop resisting life. You stop trying to control outcomes. You allow existence to unfold as it is. And in that surrender, you experience true peace for the first time. Before this stage, your mind was trapped in time, always thinking about the past or the future. But now you see that time itself is an illusion. The past exists only as memory. The future exists only as thought. There is only one reality, the eternal present moment. The Tao Te Ching describes this state as absolute presence. Be still like the mountain, flow like the river, live like the wind, without resistance, without fear. The Sufi mystic Rumi speaks of this as becoming one with existence itself. You were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life? At this stage, you do not fear the future. You do not cling to the past. You are simply here, fully alive, fully awake, fully present. For the first time, you see life as a cosmic dance, a play of energy, experience, and evolution. You begin to understand what Lao Tzu meant when he said, the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Tao Te Ching, Chapter 1. Words cannot capture what you now feel. You see the grand design, the interconnectedness of all things. This is why enlightened beings speak with such calmness, clarity, and love. They do not fear loss because they know nothing is ever truly lost. They do not seek because they have already found what they were looking for. At this point, you have nothing left to prove, nothing left to chase, because you are already home. But there is one final step left, the last and greatest awakening. Level 6, Transcendence and Enlightenment, beyond the illusion. What happens when there is nothing left to seek? When all questions dissolve? When the self disappears? When there is no longer a you separate from existence? What remains? This is the final stage of awakening. At this level, you transcend all limitations, all beliefs, all illusions. You do not just understand the truth, you become it. There is no more searching, no more identity, no more separation between the observer and the observed, only pure awareness, infinite consciousness, the eternal now. This is enlightenment. For your entire life, you have believed in yourself, a person with a name, a mind filled with memories, a body moving through time. But now you see that the self was never real. It was a temporary construct, a story the mind created to make sense of reality. The great Zen master Huang Po described it like this: if you wish to awaken, do not seek the mind. Do not seek the self, for both are illusions. This is where many people hesitate, because if the self is not real, then what are you? The answer is everything. In Advaita Vedanta, the final realization is, Aham Brahmasmi, I am the infinite consciousness. The drop of water realizes it was never separate from the ocean. The dreamer wakes up. At this stage, you go beyond all opposites, all divisions, all concepts of duality. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu describes this transcendence. When people see some things as good, other things become bad. When people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly. The wise go beyond this illusion. You realize that everything in existence, the light and the dark, the joy and the suffering, is part of the same dance. There is no longer judgment, only understanding. You no longer resist what is. You simply flow with existence. At this level, you no longer operate from personal desires, attachments, or fears. The mystic Rumi expressed it this way: when the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other, do not make sense anymore. You live in a state of effortless presence, stillness, and deep peace. The Buddha described this as nirvana, the extinguishing of all craving, all illusions, all suffering. In the Bible, this is the kingdom of heaven, not a place, but a state of being. Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you." Luke 17:21. This is liberation, a freedom greater than anything the mind could have imagined. After reaching this state, something unexpected happens. You do not vanish. You do not float into another dimension. Instead, you return. But this time, you are different. You walk through life without attachment, without resistance. You interact with the world, but you are not of it. The Zen master Bankei Yotaku described this state: before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Life continues, but you are no longer bound by it. You no longer seek meaning because you have become the meaning itself. The greatest secret of enlightenment is this: there was never a journey, never a path, never a goal. Everything you were searching for was always here. You were not separate from the truth. You were not separate from the universe. You were not separate from God. You were it all along. The Bhagavad Gita expresses this beautifully. The enlightened one sees God in all things, and all things in God. And so the awakening is complete. You are free. Awakening is not a destination. It is an infinite unfolding. Every moment is a new realization. Every experience is a teacher. The greatest gift of enlightenment is this: you do not need to escape life. You can fully embrace it. Live, laugh, love, be present. Because in the end, there is nowhere to go, nothing to achieve, nothing to become. You are already home. You always were. The question is, how can we live now so that when the time comes, we transition with peace, wisdom, and purpose?